So this is going to be a One Piece video again. And if you've seen the title, then you know it's going to be about brothers in One Piece in regards to, Brothers Day, being May 24th this year. I did the Mother's Day video already for a bunch of the different mothers in One Piece, and the hat will not stay where it's supposed to. And I'm going to do a Father's Day one and a Sister's Day one and a Grandparents' Day one as well. Since I mentioned I might do I couldn't do like a Valentine's Day theme one at one point or earlier this year because I don't know. I didn't have a video ready at that point in time. I might just retroactively go back and be like, okay, I'm just going to do a video where I talk about some of the different canon couples in One Piece, like, Rayleigh and Shockey and Baby Five and Sai and stuff like that. So I might do that, but first I'm going to get through the different, family related ones. I have a couple of different, hats and materials here that kind of represent different brothers in One Piece. I have a cowboy hat to represent Ace, which this is not going to stay on my head for very long because it keeps getting in my eyeline. I have donut ears, which I may wear for a little while to represent Katakuri because he, of course, loves donuts. Not that I blame him. I have this kind of a hat to kind of represent Sabo. I don't have goggles, but we have this. Yes, I know it's technically a cowboy hat, not a straw hat, but this kind of represents Luffy because I don't have a straw hat. And the boa, feathered boa, is kind of supposed to represent Doflamingo and Roshinate or Corazon. In regards to that relationship. I will be talking about all these different brothers, plus a few other kind of other minor characters. There's, I think, one in here that's technically a non-canon brother combo. And brother is not going to just mean that they only have brothers. It will include, like, if they have a sister. It will include if they have a sister, or if they are a brother with a bunch of sisters, or even in regards to, obviously, with Luffy, Ace, and Sabo, they are not related by blood, they are related by bond, through, the sake ceremony, of course. I will talk about some brothers who have that type of a thing where they're kind of like, foster brothers, or they're like have a foster brother with a foster sister, or that type of a thing. So, let's start. So obviously the top of the list is going to be the straw hat related ones. And the top of that list is, of course, Luffy, Ace, and Sabo. Yeah, love them. Top of the list is, of course, Luffy, Ace, and Sabo. Luffy is, of course, the youngest of the three. If I remember correctly, Sabo is technically the older one because when, Sabo, quote-unquote, died in the flashback, Ace kind of took on more the role of being the older brother. The three of them are obviously not related by blood, but they are still, related by bond through the sake ceremony. We know how Luffy and Ace met and how they, Sabo and Ace met first when Ace, was living with Dadan as a kid, and he, would wander through the forest and the jungle and everything on Mount Corbo and find his way to the Great Terminal, and that's where him and Sabo met, and of course they started to, save up their money and treasure and everything so they could buy a pirate ship and leave, because of course Sabo wanted freedom from his parents, and of course, Ace wants to... he wants to, define himself as being something other than the Pirate King's son. I will talk about Stelly a tiny bit, but first we'll just finish up with Luffy, Ace, and Sabo. And then, of course, Luffy comes into the picture because Garp, drops him off to be raised by mountain bandits because Garp does not think ahead. Leaves Luffy with the mountain bandits, and Luffy and Ace do not get along at first. Well, Luffy keeps trying to follow Ace because he's like, well, I don't have anybody else to talk to. So Ace just keeps doing like really hard paths, and Luffy eventually gets to the point where he can follow him, and then, him and Ace and Luffy and Sabo, kind of have to work together because, Luffy gets captured by, it's the Blue Jam Pirates. He gets captured by them, and Luffy, they're trying to get Luffy to tell them where Ace and Sabo hide all of their treasure, and Luffy is, of course, refusing to do this and getting beaten up. Admittedly, he already has to become Mogomo no Mi at this point in time, so he can kind of take a little bit more of a beating in regards to that, as opposed to just being an 8-year-old kid that's being pummeled by adults. And, Ace and Sabo see that Luffy is acting this way, that he's refusing to give up their location, and they show up and they save him. And this is, of course, when Ace's Conqueror's Haki activates for the first time, when they're, at that point in time when Luffy and Sabo are being, threatened. And then, of course, Ace and Sabo are able to save Luffy, and they get out of there. And then, of course, they do the sake cup ceremony. If you share sake together, then you're brothers. And then, of course, in that vein of things, then of course they grow up in the forest for a while. They go after crocodiles. They get stronger. They deal with Dodon, and I feel so sorry for Dodon. But she obviously loves all three boys. Particularly very obvious when it comes to Ace and Luffy later on. I already talked about her a fair amount in the Mother's Day video. And then, of course, when Luffy and when Sabo's father comes into play, when Outlook shows up, Outlook the Third, it's already a stupid name. At least Sabo's better than Outlook the Third. I'm like, okay, you have slightly better taste in names than your parents did. He'll get talked about on Father's Day, as horrible as a father as he is. And then, Outlook shows up and he takes Sabo back after, threatening Luffy and Ace. And he takes Sabo back to Hightown, and that's where Sabo finds out about Stelly. Stelly, the little prick that he is. They're foster brothers, step brothers, whatever you want to refer to them as. They're not related by blood, so they're not half brothers. Then, Sabo tries to find a way to escape, and of course we know how that part goes, unfortunately. That doesn't go well. And then, of course, Sabo gets amnesia from his injury with trying to deal with having to deal with, I think it's a St. Gelmac that shows up. So Sabo, unfortunately, loses his memory, and then he's raised by Dragon. And then, of course, Sabo does not remember he remembers his name is Sabo, and he remembers that his parents were horrible, so he didn't want to go back to them, but he does not remember Luffy or Ace. Now, I don't know if at this point in time if Dragon knows that Sabo was friends with Luffy and Ace at that point in time. I would like to hope that if he did know, that Dragon would have maybe done something about that. And, that would have been a, helpful thing to do there, Dragon. You already have one son on this island. You might as well at least try to be a little more considerate with his brother. And such, but of course, Sabo does not get his memory back until he sees in the paper that, Ace has been killed. And then, of course, he has his whole, he's, in a fever coma type thing for like a couple of days while all of his memories come flooding back. And of course, we saw this during the Dressrosa arc when Sabo explains, or between Sabo and Koala, we kind of get the flashback about that. And then, of course, moving on from there, we, of course, have it where we don't find out that Luffy has a brother until, they get to Alabasta. We don't know anything about Luffy's family at this point in time. Technically, we've met Garp in the cover pages with the, Kobe, Diary of Kobe Meppo, but, we don't know that that's Luffy's grandfather at this point in time. We don't find that out until Water 7, of course, or even find out who Luffy's father is until Water 7. But yeah, and, we find out about Ace in Alabasta, and he helps Luffy and the others escape. In the anime, for a little bit of filler, he travels with them for a little while into Alabasta, and then he leaves, like, kind of like that, as opposed to in the manga where it's just like, oh, nope, I'm here, I'm going to save my brother, and then I'm going to leave. Although, of course, Luffy just, all the rest of the crew are like, wait a second, you have a brother? Why didn't you tell us? It's like, I didn't think it was important. But, so we meet Ace there and everything, and we, of course, find out that he has the Marimara no Mi, and then, of course, Ace then has his own cover page adventure while he's trying to find Blackbeard, and has a bunch of interactions there. Um, and so we have that, and then of course we have the whole Marineford War, Impel Down arc that we deal with there, where Luffy is like, Luffy finds out that of course Ace is set for execution, and he's been separated from the rest of his crew, and he's got the Viva card, and he's like, I have to try to save my brother. I can't lose him. And Luffy, he convinces Boa Hancock to help him, of course, and she's also just kind of lovesick in and of itself, and helps get Luffy into Impel Down, and Luffy goes all the way through hell, literally trying to save his brother. And Ace has been prepared to die for a long freaking time at this point in time, unfortunately. And because Ace thought that he should never have been born, unfortunately. But so we go through that, and Luffy fights his way through, through Impel Down, through hell, and then back up through hell. Gives up so many years of his life in order for Ivankov to use, the Horum Horum no Mi to help, fix him. And then, of course, they make their way to Marineford, and Luffy fights all the way up to the top of the podium, and, punches out his own grandfather, punches out Kobe, activates his Conqueror's Haki even more, even using his, activating his Observation Haki even more. And then he saves Ace, and they're leaving, and Ace is safe. And then Akainu, oh god, and then, yeah, we all know what happens there, unfortunately. And then, Luffy loses Ace right there in his arms. And, yeah, that's a hard bit to watch in the manga. That's a hard part to read in the manga, and that was a hard part to read in watch in the anime. Because I'd gotten back into watching One Piece around Water 7. And then, when I found it again around Water 7 time, and then, so I watched the Impel Down arc and the Marineford arc. I mean, I knew what was going to happen because I'd read it, but that's still right in the heart. And so that was just not an easy thing to deal with. Luffy and Ace, we have that moment, and then of course Luffy then, he thinks for 2 years, he thinks that he's now alone in the world. And then of course we get to Dressrosa, and that's when, Luffy finds out that Sabo is still alive. I'm not alone anymore. I'm not the only one left. And he's so happy about this, and he's so happy to see Sabo, and and then of course they kind of get to reconnect, and then Sabo goes through everything to get Ace's Mera no Mi, so he now has that power. And then of course we have the moments in a couple of the movies, in Film Gold we have it where Sabo and Koala are at Grand Tesoro, and they Sabo fights against Rob Lucci in order to help Luffy, and Luffy doesn't ever know that Sabo is there. And then of course we have in Stampede, I know technically the movies are not canon, but it's still nice. And then in Stampede we have it where Sabo and Luffy team up along with Boa and Smoker and Law and technically Buggy, and they all have to work together, and Buggy's just kind of there in the background. So we have that moment there, and of course we have the moment at the end where Sabo has Anne use her her illusion powers to make an illusion version of Ace out of their fire, and so we get that moment there, which I just loved watching that. When I saw that, I'm just like, oh yay! For a moment, the the three brothers are kind of together again. I mean, I know that for like one of the anniversaries of something that Oda, my dog is whining in the background, probably because there's another dog somewhere outside. We know that I know that's in one of the anniversaries of something. I don't remember if it was just for like the 10-year anniversary or if it was for the 15 or the 10-year anniversary of like when Ace died or whatever. But he redrew some panels from that page from like that last end of the chapter where Sabo comes rushing in at the last second and saves Luffy and Ace from being killed by Akainu. And I like that. There's also that whole, the whole, alternate timeline theory of like, well, what if that had happened? What if Sabo had, gotten his memories back sooner? And he did, Dragon and Sabo and the Revolutionary Army showed up at Marineford along with the Whitebeard pirates and the Blackbeard pirates and all these impel down prisoners, and then the red-haired pirates with Shanks showing up and everything. What would have happened there? Would the dragon would have shown up? Ace may have lived. Whitebeard may still have died, but Ace may have lived. They may have been able to prevent Blackbeard from getting a hold of the Goro Goro, no, or not the Goro Goro, the Tremor fruit. Gura no Mi may have been able to prevent that from happening. But Ace would have been alive. But then of course we have the whole thing of then Luffy wouldn't have spent 2 years training, or maybe he still would have spent 2 years training. I don't know, except maybe it may have been he may have spent 2 years training other dragon instead of Rayleigh, which would have at least allowed Luffy to meet his father. Okay, and then of course I think that's about what we have there. We have hopefully Luffy and Sabo will get to see each other again in the future. That would be nice. And now we're going to move on to our next sibling set, because that took slightly longer than I anticipated to talk about for Luffy and Ace and Sabo. Next sibling set, of course, in regards to brothers, are the Vinsmoke Brothers, which are, of course, Ichiji, Niji, Sanji, and Yonji. Reiju is there as well. She'll get a little more talked about on Sisters Day. But, so we have the 4 brothers there who, of course, they are all genetically altered by Judge when their mother was pregnant with them. And then, of course, she drank the poison, as I went over in the Mother's Day video in regards to Sora, whichever one you want to call her. In regards to that, and, Sanji was the only one that did not have the, genetic manipulation. I would still say there's some parts of that genetic manipulation in his DNA, considering the fact that he sets himself on fire regularly. Even before he had hockey, he would set himself on fire on purpose. So we have that. We, of course, know that Sanji tried to be the way that his brothers were when they were growing up, be that strong, that durable, that fast, and it just didn't work. And, the 3 old, Ichiji, Niji, and Yonji, very much bullied and beat up and everything, ostracized Sanji and such. And, of course, Reiju had to go along with that, or otherwise she would have been put in the same situation as Sanji, which, again, I'll go over for the Sisters' Day. We, of course, there was, like, way back when all those siblings were introduced, before the color concepts had come out for all of them, everybody's like, oh, well, they're all going to have blonde hair like Sanji, and, like, there's all the artwork of, like, all of them with blonde hair and everything. The Rule 63 version of Sanji is Reiju. But then it's like, no, she has pink hair, Ichiji has red hair, Niji has blue hair, and Yonji has green hair. And, of course, there's, the Power Rangers type, what is it, the Kamen Rider, type of stuff that goes on with that for their transformation. And of course, Sanji, even though he has yellow hair, has the stealth black armor, which is still funny. And of course, Sanji despises his 3 brothers. At the very least, the only member of his family that's alive at the moment that he seems to have any form of affection for is his sister, which, I'll go over a bit more on Sisters' Day. But he despises his brothers, and he, despises his father and everything, and he doesn't even consider them family anymore. He considers his sister family, and if, his mother was still alive, he would, of course, consider her family, but nothing else there. And then, of course, the next kind of Straw Hat sibling, or Straw Hat brother, we have Frankie and Iceberg. Again, one of the sets of siblings that are not related at all. And in tying into that, we also have the Frankie family in regards to that. In regards to, Iceberg and Frankie there. Frankie and Iceberg, of course, were apprentices under Tom. I already talked a little bit about this when I talked about Kokoro in the Mother's Day one, because she's kind of like the mother figure to the two of them. And of course, Tom will get talked about in the Father's Day one. But Frankie and Iceberg do not get along most of the time when they're growing up. Iceberg is trying to help Tom build the sea train, and Frankie is just over there building all of his battle Frankies and everything, or Cuddy Flam at this point in time. Just gonna get called Frankie. And eventually, like Cuddy Flam, or Iceberg's like, you shouldn't be building these things. They're dangerous. Someone might use them for something, and you just leave them sitting around, which of course has ramifications later. Frankie and Iceberg, of course, they kind of, Frankie does start helping build, the sea train, and, they're able to get that finished, of course. And, and the two of them just, they argue a lot. And then, of course, later on when, after Tom dies and everybody thinks, Cuddy Flam is dead, he then, Frankie shows up with his new cyborg body, and he tells Iceberg, okay, well, I have to do this, and I did this, and, you build up this, I'm gonna go kind of be a mafia lord in Water 7. And of course, Frankie and Iceberg, they obviously still care about each other. Frankie, of course, got extremely upset when he found out that Iceberg had been shot. That when he thought that, the Straw Hats, particularly Robin, were part of, Iceberg being shot. Technically, Robin was a part of it, but it was against her will, and he finds out that later, of course. And of course, Frankie also is like called, Big Bro by a bunch of the Straw Hats, because Nami called him that when he saved her by with the motorcycle into Big Mom's face several chapters ago. We get Yami, we get Nami going, thank you, Big Bro, type thing to Frankie, which is funny. And of course, Frankie amassed his Frankie family with Mozu and Kiwi, and all the bunch of the rest of the Frankie family that he gathered up, that he's kind of the big bro of that family. And I know that in Japanese, big bro, or whatever the variation of that in Japanese is, it's the honorific type thing. Like this person is kind of an older brother, or like a big sis and older sister type figure for me, even if we're not related. Which that translates a lot to other things. And that's just there as like one of the honorifics. Of course, you do the same thing in regards to if you have like a younger sibling type figure in your life, you kind of call them that, call them the younger variation of that. And of course, Frankie, of course, saved a bunch of the Frankie family from horrible fates, being drunks or being thugs, and he kind of gives them a home. And of course, when Frankie leaves to go with the Straw Hats, we know that Iceberg kind of still gives the rest of the Frankie family a home, invites a bunch of them to come work at the Galley Law Company, and they're still kind of ship dismantlers, but he also trains them to be, shipwrights, to build the ships and everything. And of course, Mozu and Kiwi are, of course, running, Blue Nose older, former bar and everything. And then I kind of skipped over this. Ace does have a kind of a bit of a brothers relationship, a little bit. I would say with some of the the Whitebeard pirates, particularly Marco and probably Jozu and a bunch of the other captains and such of that. Of course, from the commanders of the other fleets. He does seem to be a little bit. It does seem to have a bit of that type of a relationship with them. Of course, he has the father-son relationship with Whitebeard, which I'll go over in the Father's Day video. But so we have kind of that relationship there. And then again, we have for like brothers. I would kind of say Shanks and Buggy kind of operate a little bit like brothers from what we see in the Odin flashback and stuff like that. That the two of them act like brothers, and even in the little bits of flashbacks that we've gotten before then, with them arguing about what's colder, the North or the South Pole, and they just kind of act quite a bit like brothers. That's kind of gone downhill on Buggy's end. He does not like Shanks anymore. But Shanks is still, when they interact at Marineford, Shanks just, is just like, hey, Buggy, it's nice to see you again. Nice nose. Get Luffy over there. Take him to the blue guy. Take him to Jinbei. He's fun. He'll keep him safe. Thanks. Yeah. Well, thanks. Because Shanks only has one arm. Yeah. But yes, we have that, and there's been like some cover pages of like the two of them together. But we'll see what happens in regards to what happens now between us, Shanks and Buggy, in regards to Buggy's no longer a warlord, and he's gonna need a place to go. So there's always the possibility that he may end up going and having to team up with Shanks. He's like, well, I don't have anywhere else to go, so I'd rather go to the. I don't want to go to the red-haired guy, but I might as well. And then they do that, and they like team up there and everything. Now we're going to go through some of the other sibling pairs that we're kind of introduced to throughout the series. And the first one of those, technically, we're introduced to this character way at the beginning. In the East Blue arc, and then of course we're introduced to this other character way later in the Fishman Island arc, and we only learn that they are related. They are half siblings, and of course I'm talking about Arlong and Madame Charlie. Arlong is of course the captain of the Arlong Pirates. He's the one that killed Nami's mother and enslaved her and did all those horrible things to her, and enslaved her town and a bunch of other towns in the East Blue. And of course, Luffy's, the one that defeats him way back in the East Blue. He's like the final boss of the East Blue. And of course, so we get that moment. We get Nami's backstory tied into Arlong, of course, but we really don't get any of Arlong's backstory until way later, several hundred chapters later, when they get to Fishman Island, and Nami and Jinbei and Sanji are talking, and Jinbei, Jinbei explains, the backstory with Fisher Tiger and the backstory with Otohime, and then of course they find out, and this is of course when they're introduced to Madame Shirley, because she's King's boss at the Mermaid Cafe, and we find out that Madame Shirley and Arlong are half siblings through their father. That Arlong several years older than her, and that their father showed up one day, like he kind of abandoned Arlong in the Fishman District, and then he showed up several years later and gave Charlie to Arlong, saying, "Here, this is your half sister. Raise her, keep her safe. Blah 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 blah. I'm gonna go do something else now." We never find out anything else about Arlong's father. But as horrible as Arlong is to Nami, via the backstory that we get, it doesn't excuse anything that he did to Nami or to Bellemere or to the rest of her town or to the other towns. That doesn't excuse anything, but we get more of where that mentality for Arlong comes from. He did at least seem to want to protect Madame Charlie, to protect Charlie, to keep her safe, to give her some form of a home. I think that might have been one of the reasons why I think Charlie may have been, beyond his adoration for Fisher Tiger, that might have been part of his drive to want to join the Sun Pirates and such like that, to try to make that kind of world where he may have to have suffered for some of it, but like he wanted his sister not to have to suffer. And of course, I don't know how much Arlong was aware of like her psychic powers, her visions and everything. We see her in the recent flashbacks. We've seen her talking to Goldie Roger, and explaining, in this many years and this many years this is going to happen, and the king's going to marry a carp, and there's going to be princes, and there's going to be a princess, and all this other stuff. And so we see that Charlie seems to have a much better relationship with humans than Arlong ever did. I don't know. We don't know exactly. That may have come from some of the interactions she had with, the Roger Pirates when she was a child. Or it may just come from the fact of she was never part of a group that was enslaved or anything like that. As in like none of her friends were directly enslaved necessarily, but she does seem to have a better regard for humans than Arlong ever did. And they're both shark type ones, but Arlong is, the sawtooth, saw-nose type shark, and then Charlie, I don't remember exactly what Charlie was, but we have those moments there. We never actually see the two of them interact. We just get, slight, oh, Arlong was my half brother, blah, 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 blah. Next set of siblings, we have these are kind of like a set of siblings that are in Alabasta, and we are introduced to them separately. One of them is Toto, who is, of course, Koza's father, who is Vivi's best friend, and for all intents and purposes, and one that I kind of tend to, ship Vivi with is Koza. We have Toto, and he's, of course, the old man that's in the desert at Yuba, trying to dig up water and everything, and him and Luffy work together for a little while. And then we have his brother Goro, who had been in a different area of Alabasta, I believe, trying to dig up hot springs, and of course we're introduced to him during the cover page arc with Garetsu from Skypiea. Garetsu shows up, and they end up actually finding and making these hot springs, and then they meet Koza and Toto, and they find out, oh, Goro and Toto are brothers, and and then we have that moment, and then of course they build the hot springs. And then we get to see we have Toto, of course, who we see in the anime, and then of course we saw Goro in I think it was Stampede. We saw him in Stampede. It's just like one of the many people in the crowd at one point. Him, and I think he's there with Garetsu. I could be wrong, but we see the two of them, and he's just there arguing with someone. Don't really get too much else. Hopefully that hot spring is still going well in Alabasta. And then of course, moving on down that, we have the kind of the non-canon brother duo that are the Largo and Corto, who are the from the Amigos Pirates. Largo is the captain. He's the one that has that weird net fruit that, like, if he eats something, including boiling water, he can make a net out of it, which, I mean, by technicality can be a very useful thing to have. It just depends on, your pain tolerance, I guess, for whatever it is that you're eating. And then, of course, his brother is Corto, and they're just, they're the two amigo pirates who are trying to get in good with Shiki, and they attack the Little East Blue Island. They're part of that little arc there before we go into the Strong World movie. Not too much there. The next one is a brother-sister duo again, and these are Saint Charlos and Saint Shalria, I think was her name. They're, Saint Roswald's children that are horrible. They're celestial dragons, obviously. We're introduced to the daughter first, the sister first. She's, the one that's, roaming around with her. Well, we're introduced to the brother and sister when they're roaming around, and of course, Charlos, tries to shoot Zoro, and he's being this, dick in front of everyone, and gathering, trying to, oh, I want this girl to be my new wife, get rid of wives 7 through 9, or whatever the case was, to his, servant and everything, and they're just they're the horrible versions of the celestial dragons, of course. And of course, Charlos tries to, buy Kami and shoot Tachi, and then he gets punched by Luffy. And then, of course, later on, he still gets, after the 2-year time skip, he gets, bat mallet, whatever, hit over the head in the face by Melzigard, which is also good. And it's always fun watching a celestial dragon get punched. At this point in time, the one exception to that rule would be Milzigard, because we like him now, because he has been a celestial dragon that turned his ways around, and he's now an ally. Technically would be an ally to the Straw Hats, but at the moment he's just kind of an ally to the Neptune Kingdom, to the royal family of that area of the Ryugu Kingdom, of course. Charlos is currently, in traction or whatever. We'll see where they end up. Hopefully the celestial dragons get their comeuppance and their punishment later on. We may find out that there might be a couple of other ones that are like, maybe not exactly like Homing and his wife that, left to become, normal people. But we might find out that there might be a few other ones that are a little closer to the way that Milzigard tends to be. That he's, he's more open to the idea of not having everybody, not having it be that the celestial dragons are above everybody else. But we'll see what happens with that. Charlos and his sister and his father, probably not. And then we have the Clavin brothers, who are, of course, two of the commanders in the Whitebeard pirates. They are twins. We don't really know too much about them. They're there at the Battle of Marineford. I think they're mentioned after the 2-year time skip as someone that is like some of the ones that Edward Weevil went after on his rampage against the Whitebeard pirates. Not really too much else besides there. And then we move on to the Ryugu brothers, or the Neptunian brothers, whichever one you want to call them, Fukabushi, Ryuboshi, and Mamboshi, who are, of course, the older brothers of Shirahoshi. They are very protective of their sister. They seem to get along quite well. They're all quite strong warriors, as was their father. Well, Neptune is still strong. It's just he's, old. But we have, the 3 brothers, and of course, they're kind of, they're very integral figures in the Fishman Island arc, of course, in regards to dealing with, Horty Jones and everything. And of course, we find out about their backstory with their mother, and they adored their mother, and then everything happened, and then she still kind of made them swear not to seek revenge, or not to hate, the person that killed her, that assassinated her, and to keep her wish alive, to take Fishman Island to the surface and everything. And of course, they seem to have wanted to carry on that dream as well. They took that up. They worked very hard on trying to keep good relations between the humans and the fishmen as much as they could, which was quite nice. They're, as I said, they're very protective of their sister. They do love their father. They help the Straw Hats against the new fishmen, pirates, and such. And so there's not too much else there that we deal with, but we have, 3 of them. The blue one is, of course, Fukaboshi, the kind of red one that always is, I think he keeps making the weird noises or whatever, but it's also him trying to be happy, trying to make Shirahoshi happy, is Ryuboshi, and then, of course, Mamboshi is the one that's always dancing. I won't do that again. And then, of course, the next sibling set that we get is also a Fishman sibling set. It is Den and Tom. Tom is, of course, the shipwright, of course, that trained Frankie and Iceberg way back on Water 7. He's the one that built the Oro Jackson and the Sea Train and helped revitalize Water 7. And his brother is a Den. Between the 2 of them, we kind of learn about the Fishman genetics that are, even if like this, this mermaid had a child with this fishman or with this merman or whatever variation of this, just because this one has this and this one has this for their kind of fish genetic counterparts, that doesn't mean that the child will have the same thing. The child could end up looking like one of the parents, or the child may end up looking like, an octopus type, an octopus type fishman or something like that, or fishwoman. So we have those, between the 2 of them, because Frankie's looking at Den when he meets him, and he's like, no offense, you don't look like Tom. And Den's like, yeah, I know. This is how the Fishman genetics work. So he's the one that explains that. Because that's kind of where we get the first indication of, okay, A and B do not look like each other, because Tom is a fishman and then Den is a merman. But, Den helps, talks with Frankie and everything. And I would assume that he was very sad when he got the news about Tom dying or being imprisoned. But, he didn't seem to hold anything against Frankie, which is nice. So he's kind of like an uncle to Frankie and Iceberg, although he never interacted with them until this point in time. But maybe Den can go and, once things have calmed down at some point, maybe he can swim to, maybe Den can swim to, Water 7 and see Granny Kokoro and maybe see, maybe get to meet Iceberg. Or maybe that'll be like one of the things that happens after the adventure is all finished, that maybe Den comes and they have a big family dinner with, you know, like the whole Frankie family and the and the Galley Law guys, and you know, Iceberg and Tom, or Iceberg and Frankie, and you know, Mozu and Kiwi, and you know, Granny Kokoro and Chimney and Den's there. Maybe they just have like this big, you know, family dinner, and there's like the picture of Tom off to the side or whatever from the Tom's workers. You know, that'd be a nice thing that they can do. Just, you know, Tom, you know, Frankie's surrounded by this part of his family again. And he's Den is also going to, I think, work on trying to fix up the Noah after all the damage that it incurred during the battle with the New Fishmen pirates. Next sibling set are the Yeti Cool brothers from Punk Hazard. We don't really know too much about them. They're a set of assassins. They seem to be a type of a species of giant. Considering how large they are, they attack the Straw Hats at one point, trying to get the children away from them. And of course, one of them gets cut in half by Law, and you know, Luffy and I think it's Frankie in his chopper monster form ends up attacking them. And so we get that taken care of. They're not around for a huge amount of time, couple of chapters, couple of episodes, not really all that much of a threat. They get very easily taken down. And then of course, kind of the next sibling-ish set that we're introduced to, if I'm remembering my timeline correctly, there are Sai and Boo, who are from, you know, the Kano country, who are at Dressrosa for the tournament in regards to getting the Maramara Sai and Boo are, of course, the grandsons of Don Jinchao, who is, of course, the current leader of the Hoppo Navy, and of course, Sai ends up becoming the new leader of the Hoppo Navy by the end of the arc. Sai and Boo seem to have spent quite a bit of time training, and Sai, even at one point, this is Boo, and like Boo gets knocked out. Sai is like, well, then he didn't train hard enough, type thing, or like, my brother has been lacking in his training. And of course, Sai and Boo do not like Luffy, of course, because you know, Luffy is Garp's grandson, and their family has a vendetta against Garp, and his son and his grandson, and all of that problem that, you know, does get resolved by the end of the arc, or partway through the arc that gets resolved after Luffy and Chinchao fight. And then, of course, we know that Sai and Boo and Chinchao and the Hoppo Navy are now part of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, of course. Sai is I think he's the third commander in the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. Yeah, because it's Cavendish and then Bartolomeo, and then I think it's Sai. I know Olympus is the last one, but I think we had those ones. Not really too much else that we do with between Sai and Boo. We know that Sai and Baby 5 get married, so Boo now has a sister-in-law. In regards to Baby 5, he seems happy with this, so does Don Chincha. They're both very happy at Sai's wedding in the cover pages. I do wish they animated those. Those would be fun. Or at the very least, you know, draw them out in the anime style and put them in the anime for like when they have to do filler on something. It's like, put that in it because it's technically not filler, it's canon. But, you know, so we have that moment. Those two, they get along rather well, and of course they fix their relationship. The next sibling set are Kelly and Bobby Funk, who are of course the Funk brothers that are the bounty hunters. They of course, one of them of course is extremely big and tough and durable, and the other one is small and has, you know, the short issues, the Napoleon complex. And of course, he's the one with the jacket fruit, which is still, admittedly, one of the stupidest devil fruits I've ever seen, but if applied right, would be amazing. And, you know, applied right to the right people in the right situations, awesome. In this case, eh. You know, so we have that, and they, you know, they fight again. You know, they're fighting in the tournament as well. And they, you know, they try to, I just watched the episodes where they try to trick Luffy into getting trapped inside of this, you know, this water area, so they can try to, you know, use him as a way of, you know, oh, well, if we catch Luffy and Law, then we can use, and like, you know, well, Zoro wasn't there, but like Luffy and Law, then we can, you know, get the prize money from Doflamingo, and such. So we have that moment, and then there's not really too much else that I think that happens with the Punk Brothers. I don't think that they joined the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, unless I completely missed that, but I don't think they did. And then, of course, we get one of the other ones were the feathered boa comes into play because I don't have a feathered coat. We have Doflamingo and Rocinante, who are of course Don Quixote Doflamingo and Don Quixote Rocinante, or Joker in regards to Doflamingo, and Corazon in regards to Rocinante. Corazon, of course, is heart in regards to the Doflamingo or the Don Quixote pirates. And you know, when they're brothers, when they're kids, they kind of seem to get along okay. Their father takes them, their mother and their father leave being celestial dragons, and Rocinante seems to be very clingy to their mother when he's a kid. Admittedly, he's still quite young, and then of course, everything happens with their mother gets sick after they get thrown out of their house and tortured by the townspeople. Because they don't have the protection from the Marines or the Celestial Dragons anymore. And, we get that backstory there where of course, their mother dies. And then, of course, at the very least, they seem to adore their mother. And then, then Doflamingo gets, I would put a little bit toward pushed/tricked. Well, not tricked, but like pushed/ coerced by trouble. I'm not saying that Doflamingo wouldn't have necessarily eventually snapped, but him killing his father, of course, is kind of a little bit prompted by trouble and such. But so we have that, and then of course the two brothers are separated. And Rocinante ends up being raised by Sengoku, which I'll go over in the Father's Day video. And Doflamingo then kind of raises himself alongside Pika and Treble and Diamante and Virgo. Raises himself along them and starts building up his, the Don Quixote pirates. And then, of course, this is where, he starts building up the family more, and he gets Senor Pink and Jola and Lao G and, Mock Vice, and then, the kids start coming in. And then, of course, then Rocinante comes back. Rocinante, of course, has spent the last, 10, 15, 20, whatever years, being raised by Sengoku to become a Marine. And he's, there's theories that maybe he was part of an early version of Sword. There's that theory, but and unless that's 100% confirmed, I'm not going to put a lot of merit into that at the moment in regards to like canon. But Rocinante shows up and he takes on the new seat of Corazon because of course Virgo has gone to. I mean, it's a smart move on. I mean, I'll admit sending Virgo in to be like a spy inside of the Marines is a very smart move on Doflamingo's part. I'll give him that. And then Rocinante comes in, and as we get that flip there, and Rocinante then becomes the heart seat and takes up the mantle of Corazon, and he's of course there to try to get all these kids, Baby Five and Law and Buffalo, try to get them to not want to be part of the Don Quixote family, of the Don Quixote pirates. And he keeps dropping Law out of windows and kicking Baby Five and all this other stuff to just try to dissuade them of this. Which kind of leads into the second, brothers set, or sibling set in this case, is Rocinante and Law. A lot of people kind of put, no, Rocinante was kind of like a father dog. It's like, Law already had his father. He had his father back in Flevence, and he loved his father. It would have been one thing if he didn't have a father at all when he was in Flevence, or if his father was horrible. That would have been one thing. And of course, Law is, of course, the older brother of Lamy, who unfortunately died in Flevence. So we have that there. Unfortunately, the poor girl that didn't deserve that. Their mother and their father didn't deserve it, and most of the town didn't deserve it either. From the horrible thing that happened there with the White Plague, or the White Death, or whatever, the Amber Lead Syndrome. But of course, Rocinante and Law. Rocinante finds out that Law is a member of the D clan, and that's when he grabs Rocinante, and they leave and they go to try to find this cure. And Rocinante is very protective of Law, considering I think he keeps setting hospitals on fire whenever they refuse to treat Law. I'm like, that might be a little counterproductive to your method here, Rocinante. And then of course they find out about the op fruit from Doflamingo, and Rocinante gets hold of the fruit and gives it to Law. forces him to eat it, which is just kind of funny. And then, of course, that allows Law can now heal himself, but unfortunately, the Don Quixote pirates show up, and then, Rocinante is then shot by his own brother after he, tries to protect Law. He locks Law in the chest behind him and uses his, his hush-hush powers, silence powers, whatever, to, trap the sounds from Law inside of the chest, so that way, Rocinante can say, "Oh no, Law already ran off and everything. He's gone. You're not gonna find him here anymore." And then, and the Doflamingo shoots him and everything, but he keeps, he stays alive long enough to hold the sound inside of the chest as, Law is screaming inside of the chest. Presumably, I would think that Rocinante can still hear what's going on inside the chest because it's his power. He just prevents the sound from leaving, that exact area, type of a thing. So he could still hear Law screaming inside of the chest, maybe. And of course, Rocinante dies with, the smile on his face. Like a D. He's not a D, but, Don Quixote has D in it, but that's not the same thing. And then, so we have, those three kind of tied together between, Doflamingo and Rocinante, and then, being Asho brothers, and then Rocinante and Law, so Corazon, being, kind of the brothers through bond to a degree, and of course that's why Law goes on his vendetta against Doflamingo in the Dressrosa arc. That's why he has that vendetta against him. Admittedly, if Law, or if Doflamingo had not killed Rocinante, had not killed Corazon, then, and just, allowed it to be that Law got a hold of the, Ape no Mi, and, the Ape fruit, and, allowed that to happen, allowed Law to heal himself and everything, and then just, let Law and Rocinante still be part of the family, then, Law may not necessarily be be an ally of Luffy at the moment. He may have been closer to, being, he may have taken over the Heart Seed, may have become the new Corazon, and, been perfectly fine with, what, Doflamingo did in regards to going into Dressrosa and taking over Dressrosa to a degree. Maybe not. Maybe not that necessarily, but Law may have been somewhere in that mix. Or he may have still gone off and started the Heart Pirates, and, he found, speaking of the Heart Pirates, then of course we have Beppo and Zeppo. We're introduced to Beppo, of course, way back in the Sabaody arc, where, of course, he's just this, polar bear in this, like, orange jumpsuit. And we're like, he's cute, but what is he? And then it's not, until a couple hundred chapters or whatever later, we find out, oh, he's a mink. Okay, that makes sense. Whatever the frick a mink is, and of course we get the whole explanation of, this is Zoe, these are minks, this is Carrot, she's gonna go with you for a while. Take the bunny. Take the bunny with you. And, so we have that moment, and then, of course, and, we find out that Pebo had an older brother named Zeppo, who looked like a panda bear. We find out about him during Totland arc from Pedro. He explains that, well, Zeppo and I were part of this, this Noct expedition party that were then perceived to be pirates, and and then we tried to sneak in here to get a hold of the poneglyph from Big Mom, and that didn't work. And then she took, tried to take, 100 years of life from Zeppo, and that killed him. And then, this when, Pedro cuts out his own eye, and, everything to try to appease Big Mom. Was like, no, please don't do this. Please don't kill me. I need to live long enough to see this and everything. And, I would assume that since then, Pebo unfortunately, has learned about his brother's death, I would assume. And what ends up happening is, of course, Pebo, when he was still a kid, he had wanted to go and see the ocean, so he kind of went to the edge of Zunisha to try to look, to be closer to his brother. And then he fell off the elephant and ended up, floating in the ocean, and ended up like getting washed in, because, Zunisha likes to wander around quite a bit and everything, and has been wandering around for the past, 800 years or whatever. And, Pebo washed up onto this island in the North Blue, and then he meets, Sachi and Penguin, and then who are beating up, and then Law shows up, and then, Pebo now kind of has this brother relationship with the four of them. And then we move into the Charlotte Brothers. We move into the Charlotte Brothers, which, of course, the main one, of course, out of those is Katakuri, that we interact with, along with Parasparrow. Katakuri is, of course, the second son of the Charlotte family. He is the strongest fighter besides Limlin. He is one of the Sweet Commanders. He has the Mochi Mochi no Mi. He is extremely strong. He has his, Future Sight Haki. He has Conqueror's Haki. He has Armament Haki. And, him and Luffy have that, 12-hour long battle in and out of the Mirror Realm and the Mirror World and everything. And so we have that whole bit there. And, yeah, that's a fun bit to deal with there. And Luffy, and he kind of develops a respect for Luffy by the end of it, and Luffy seems to develop a respect for him. We of course have Parasparrow, who I would say does not seem to be as protective as Katakuri as is of the rest of his siblings, but he still seems to be at least somewhat protective of his siblings. Parasparrow is of course the eldest of the Charlotte children. There are 46 sons in the Charlotte family, and if I remember correctly, there are 39 daughters. And yeah, that's an extremely large family. Yeah. I don't have any biological brothers. I have a brother-in-law, and not law as in my brother, as in joke there. Brother-in-law, my sister married and everything, and I have him. That's the closest thing I have to a actual brother. My mom had 4 brothers, and my dad is my dad is has 2 younger brothers and 3 younger sisters. So there's a lot of it's like a lot of brothers and such like that on both sides of my family. There's a lot of brothers in some of those cases. I come from 2 very large families, but not as large as the Charlotte family, obviously, but it's still quite large. And so we have those moments. We get flashbacks a bit where we find out Katakuri has his eel teeth and eel mouth and his scars and everything. And of course we find out that he started wearing the scarf as a way to prevent his siblings, his younger siblings, particularly his sisters, from being punished or being teased or taunted or bullied because of him. And of course this comes into the play, of course, specifically when Brule is attacked when she is a child. She gets the giant scar across her face that Katakuri sees this, and then he goes and he puts the scarf on, and then he goes and beats the crap out of the ones that did that to his sister, of course. Because he takes on that mantle, and of course he takes on the mantle of being the perfect big brother, the one that will protect his younger siblings, younger sisters specifically. Will never he's never seen lying on his back. He doesn't do any of that stuff. He is very much the perfect older brother. And of course he is a triplet set. He has Daifuku and Oven. In regards to the relationships between some of the siblings, Daifuku, or no, it's not Daifuku, it's Oven, ends up punching Chiffon, because she's trying to help the Straw Hats and everything, even though she's trying to help, make Mama calm down by making the giant wedding cake again. He still ends up punching her, and then Sanji kicks him. And of course, we have we have Cracker there, who is of course one of the other Sweet Commanders. He has, he's the older brother of Angel and Custard. And of course, he's, we see his siblings be extremely worried about him when he's, beaten by Luffy. We see a fair amount of concern for, the Charlotte siblings in amongst each other. They get very concerned when Muscapone, whatever it is, when they gets his soul ripped out by Big Mom, we get, quite a bit of concern for him from his siblings. And then we have, the other siblings have concern for each other, not just for their sisters, but for, to each other and everything. There's, all the different variations of the sibling sets. There's, what is it, Dulce and whatever the two balloon ones and everything. And, we have all of them. And, there's, I have a list, but I'm not going to go through the list right now of like all the different Charlotte brothers, and all the different Charlotte sisters, but I'm not doing that. But we have those moments with them. And then we have our three Wano sibling sets, sibling sets or the brothers sets or so that are introduced in Wano. All of these three are all a brother-sister set. And the first one that we are introduced, of course, to are Kozuki Momonosuke and Kozuki Hiyori, who are, of course, the two children of Kozuki Oden and Kozuki Toki. And we, of course, Momonosuke is technically the older of the two. He's technically chronologically supposed to be 28 years old. Hiyori is 26 years old. We, of course, know that they were separated 20 years ago when Toki sent, Momonosuke along with Kinemon and Kanjuro and Raizo and Okiku into the future. So that way, sent them 20 years into the future to await for the prophecy. And then she, of course, sent Hiyori with, sent Hiyori off with Kawamatsu. And, Kawamatsu tried to keep her safe and everything. And then, of course, she ended up, wandering off because he wasn't able to eat because he kept giving her all of his food. And then, she went off and she ended up getting found by Denjiro. Thankfully, it was found by a ally. Who's, pretending to be Kiroshiro at this point in time. And, he, says, he's like, okay, well, I know who you are, but we have to hide this from everybody for who you are. So, you're going to pretend to be called Komurosaki. And, and she agrees with this, and she becomes, the highest paid and the most, desired courtesan in, Wano. And of course, she makes her way into those different areas, and she, uses that as a way to kind of gain information and gain money, and then the dog is jingling in the background. And so we have that whole instance there. And of course, Momonosuke does want to protect his sister. He does miss his sister. And of course, Hiyori is extremely happy when she finds out that her brother is still alive. That he is there now in the future, and that she's not the only one. And of course, it's going to be a very interesting reunion when they get to it, because, Momonosuke is a little perverted prick, and, he likes to jump on women, and it, there was the whole theory or the whole funny joke of like, well, when he ends up interacting with his sister, if he hadn't known she was his sister, would he have just jumped on her and, done what he does to Nami and Robin a lot of the time? Yeah, that would have been an interesting way of like, brother, please get off of me. That would just scar Momonosuke for life and probably make him stop doing that for a while. But we also have the moment where it's like we see in the flashbacks, we see where like she like jump kicks him in the face, which I just found so funny. And so we have those moments, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully they get reunited. There is the theory that Toki is the one, or that Hiyori was the one healing the scabbards that they saw on the Marys in that closet room area. there's a theory that it was either Hiyori or Toki, and it's like, well, how would Hiyori have gotten there? Because she didn't know about the change in plans and everything, so we'll see what happens. I still kind of put more money on it. It might be Toki, but I could be wrong. It could be Hiyori. Or there's the joke answer of, it's Inaru. I'm like, I don't think so. And then, of course, we move, so it'll be very interesting to see Hiyori and Momonosuke reunite. And then hopefully they can work together in order to rule Wano and hopefully open it up to the world and help make it, hopefully keep it as an ally to the Straw Hats, but it depends on if the Marines show up. And then the next sibling set that we get are Ulti and Page One in regards to the brother. Page One is, of course, one of the Tobiropo. Ulti is as well. Page One is has the power of the Spinosaurus Devil Fruit, which is, I'll admit, Spinosaurus are kind of a cool looking dinosaur. And so we see him interact earlier on. We see him and Drake and Hawkins kind of have to work together, and he seems. I think they state that Page One is the youngest out of the Tobiropo, and he seems to be also the most introverted out of the Tobiropo. Of course, given his sister is not surprising. Yeah, no, given having Ulti as his older sister is not surprising. She's extremely protective of him, as we saw whenever Page One got hurt, either by Luffy or by Nami and Usopp or by Big Mom when he got hockey punched by Big Mom. We'll see what happens with that. Yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to happen there. See if Ulti gets back up. Maybe. I'm gonna go with not. But we'll see what happens with them. They seem to be under the Ulti and Page One seem to have the mentality of, yeah, no, if you can beat us down, yeah, if you can beat Master Kaido, we'll work for you, type of thing. So we'll see what happens with that. They seem to be very loyal to Kaido, or at the very least, Ulti seems to be. But she's also extremely protective of Page One, which is just funny. And of course, she also likes to jump on his back and choke him while they're running, which is funny. And that'll be kind of funny to watch in the anime. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe by the time I get to Sisters Day, they might show some artwork of them. But I don't know if they'll have any of that stuff out yet for the anime. We'll see. The other one that we have are. Then we have, Izo and Kikunojo. We are going to talk a little bit more about Izo in this case because Kikunojo, or Okiko, or Kikunojo of the Lingering Snow, as she's referred to, identifies as female. She is kind of the first trans character that we see in One Piece. Of course, the other one in that case at the moment is Yamato. We've seen the cross-dressing characters to a degree that are, all of the Okamas. But Kikunojo is kind of the one where they have it where it is, seems to be that where it's not just her, being very obviously a guy dressing up like a girl. Because when we first interact with her, we think she is a girl until, it's explained, well, I'm female at heart, which fine by me. You do you, Okiku. And the rest of the scabbards seem to be perfectly fine with this as well. But of course, Izo was one of the commanders of the Whitebeard army, of the Whitebeard, Whitebeard fleet. We know that him and Kikunojo grew up on Wano, and that they were they got brought into Odin's scabbards, his family. Because he found them and they were starving, and he gave them food, and that eventually grew, and they became very indebted to Odin, and he kept them safe, and then of course they all got stronger over the years, and Izo's the one that jumped onto the Whitebeard ship with Odin when they were leaving and everything, and of course, well, you know, Nekomamushi and Inarashi jumped onto the ship too. There's a theory that those two are actually brothers, because the minks have the same kind of genetic setup as the fishmen, where it's like, well, you have this and you have this, because like we see Peckham's parents, and his mother is kind of a bear, and then his father is a monkey, and he's a lion. So they seem to have that same type of a genetic setup in regards to it's a genetic lottery. Um, in regards to that, so there's the possibility that Inarashi and Nekomamushi are might be brothers, but they could also just have been very close friends when they left Zoe all those years ago and made their way to Wano. But of course, Izo then travels with Odin and Whitebeard, and he sees Odin meet Toki, and then of course sees them. They have Hiyori and Momonosuke, and then why Izo didn't go with Roger and Toki and them when they went with didn't go with Odin when he left to go with Roger. I don't know, but he stayed with the Whitebeard pirates, and then he never ended up returning to Wano until now. And then of course we find out that him and Okiku are brother and sister. And I don't know if Kiku would have hit that point in her development when when he left. By the time that Izo left, if she would have been in far enough in her development that she would have been like, no, I don't want to be your brother. I want to be your sister. I don't know if he would have been there in that been there for that development, or if that came along later. He does compliment Kiko on the fact that she has become quite a wonderful samurai, a wonderful swordsman, is quite skilled, and of course she gave him that burn in one of the recent chapters of well, when her arm was cut off and everything, and she's she kind of does the "'tis but a scratch." And she's like, it hurt worse when you left, and I didn't know where my brother was. And I just think that Izo's yeah, sorry. Odin was being Odin, and I had to follow him, type of thing. She doesn't seem to hold a grudge against her brother at this point in time, but we'll see what happens after this whole battle thing is over. I don't know what's going to happen with Kiku's arm. We'll find out. I would assume that it cannot be reattached, considering it's been chopped off too recently, and even with Law's doctor ability, I don't think that's going to happen. And they don't have, Leo there to be able to stitch up her arm back to her body after Law got rid of the dead parts. Maybe not. That probably wouldn't work. We'll see what happens with that. But Kiku might be kind of one-armed for a while. She could join Shanks and Eustace Kid in that regard. Not a bad group to be in. But so we have that moment going on right now. We'll see what happens with the rest of that. Izo might stay in Wano. We know that Izo has that he is quite good with guns and firearms and such like that. He does still know how to use a scabbard, of course, and he might be taking up the mantle of one of the next scabbards, since Kanjuro is hopefully going to be dead soon. Yes, I want Kanjuro to die. He's one of the characters where I want him to die, and then they can give his devil fruit to someone that can use it well. I would kind of put toward more I know that Oda said that the devil fruit that would work best for Usopp is that pocket devil fruit. But there's the I would also say that since Usopp is an extremely good artist, that having Kanjuro's devil fruit, that whatever the sketch devil fruit, whatever it's going to be called, that would also be a good one for Usopp to have, because he's a very good artist, and he would be able to use that as a way to paint up different things that they can use and then bring it to life for the duration of the amount of time that they need it. But that that would just be one of the ones that I could say that they give to that. But that's moving on to something else. So yeah, hopefully Izo might be staying in Wano and staying around his sister for a while. Maybe the two of them can catch up, find out a little bit more about what happened in Wano, and how did time travel feel? Well, Still kept me looking younger than you. We'll see what happens there. It'll be very interesting to see how they we'll see what happens with that. We'll probably get introduced to maybe some more sibling sets throughout the rest of the series. We've still got, what I would say recently, like 4.5 to 5 more years or something like that. I mean, we've still got to get through the rest of, first we got to finish Wano. Then we got to hopefully go to Elbaf, and then we'll make our way to, Laugh Tale and get the One Piece there, and then there's probably going to be a giant conflict between either Luffy fights the Marines, or that Luffy has to fight Blackbeard, or that everybody fights Blackbeard, and then they have to fight the Marines, which I'm just like, okay, at least it's like, it might be like they beat Blackbeard, and then everybody might just be way too tired after they beat Blackbeard, like, even like Akainu's like sitting there on the ground, like just like exhausted from having to deal with Blackbeard, and he's just looking at Luffy, and Luffy's just looking at him, they're glaring at each other, and like Blackbeard's body is off on the far side of the island or whatever, just like, dead, and like blah 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 blah, and like Akainu and Luffy are like looking at each other, and Luffy's like, I really want to kill you for what you did to my brother, but I am exhausted right now, and my crew's exhausted, and our allies are exhausted, and your group is exhausted too. So how about we wait a month, and then we all meet back up somewhere specific, and we can duke it out. And like Akainu's just sitting there, Sakazuki, whatever his name is sitting there, and he's just like you got like bandages all over him or whatever, like exhausted and everything, and he's just like, as much as I hate to agree with a pirate, and I don't blame you for wanting to kill me for killing your brother. Yeah, we can. We'll go. You guys go. See you in a month. Heal up. I want to have a good fight. Like the Marines leave, and the Straw Hats and their allies leave, and then a month later, they all meet back up on like whatever island, maybe not Laugh Tale, but like somewhere else. They all meet back up, and they're all ready, and it's just like, okay, we're all at 100% health now. Now let's fight. And then we get the whole big battle between like Luffy versus Akainu, or Sabo versus Akainu is there as well, and like we have the Revolutionary Army are there, or whatever the case may be. I don't know. It might end up being where the Marines are forced to work with Luffy and his group to defeat Blackbeard. I don't know. Depends on how the rest of the Wano arc plays out, and how it plays out into the rest of the series, because it might be Akainu me like, as much as I don't want to work with a freaking pirate, Luffy is at least a slightly Straw Hat is a better alternative to having to deal with Blackbeard. So I will work with you, and we'll beat Blackbeard, and then we'll deal with our own freaking baggage with each other later. Aokiji's off to the side, or Kuzan's off to the side. He's like, yeah, I could have told you that years ago. I'm gonna go fight with Straw Hat now. Like, I don't know. We'll see what else happens with that. I think the next one in this group, or in these videos, would be the Father's Day one, which would be in June, I believe. I think it's June is for Father's Day, if I remember my dates correctly for that. I have it written here. Yep, June 20th. So the next one will be the Father's Day one on June 20th, and I'll do a bunch of the various biological father figures, and then father figures in One Piece. So we'll see what happens with that. Not really too much else there. As far as I'm aware, I tried to stick with as many of the major sibling pairs and some of the more minor ones. There's probably like background sibling pairs that are like, well, this one and this one were a brother, but you didn't talk about them, and I'm like, well, that's because I don't know who they are, or I don't care. I think I hit all the major ones. So that's what I got. Little shorter than the Mother's Day one, but I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you have a brother or a brother figure in your life, make sure that tell them that you love them. And since this is kind of going to be going up on a weekend when there's a bunch of graduations going on and everything, my niece graduated from high school, so I congratulate her on graduating from high school. And yeah, I have an 18-year-old niece, so we'll be 18. Yeah, and so congratulations to any of the other graduates out there. I had a couple of other cousins and people around me that have graduated from either high school or college in the past couple of weeks. So congratulations to them. And if you have a brother or a brother figure, as I said, make sure that you tell them that you love them and how much they mean to you, or share a cup of sake with them if that is your prerogative. Or if you're too young to drink, to share some apple juice with them or something, and say, well, if we share apple juice, we're brothers. We're brothers anyway, but whatever. Okay. Bye. Stop counting only those things you have lost. What is gone is gone. So ask yourself this: what is there that still remains to you?